Yes, I love it.
Elizabeth is here.
Hi.
So glad she got all connected.
Good to
Hello.
see you. Hi, Elizabeth. Good to see you.
Are you my long lost friend?
I know.
That
I
is
feel like this is
exactly
a reunion. This is so nice.
I know. Yeah, I don't know where my little Zoom link just went away. So now I found it.
okay.
We
Good. I'm
always
glad you
have
found it.
something.
It's so
So
funny
Right.
because as soon as I got on Elizabeth, I was like, I feel like this is like a reunion. Like we're just getting the gang back together to talk
that's
about
right.
Yes.
another book.
I know. I was saying I'm determined to make it to the store one way or another at some
Yes.
point, so it will happen.
It will
If when
happen.
you come, there will be fanfare for sure.
Yeah. Oh, you guys are the best.
Truly. I mean, I
I'm
think Shiner
excited.
is one of our best-selling books from what I remember. Like
Let
when
me tell you, every time somebody like contacts me online there and when they say they got it do somewhere, it's always your store. Always they're like, "Oh, I found
It,
out about you from Fabled." So
it was the number one paperback that we sold in 2021.
ah, that's amazing. Just amazing. What a
I
gift.
vividly remember, I think just randomly downloading the ARC and then coming in the office later and telling Elizabeth, like, listen, you need to read this one, and
Mhm.
rarely do you ever have that opportunity. Like picking a random ARC and then
Never.
ends up
Yeah.
being incredible. Never. I have the opposite happen where I pick ARC and go, this sounds great. And then maybe not so much.
Yeah.
So it was a wonderful surprise for sure.
I think it was
Awesome.
one of like maybe the best surprises still to this day, where it's
Yes.
like, oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh,
So you know what we were like when we saw your book in the publisher catalog when I was like, oh my God,
yay.
immediately yes.
Oh, you guys are the best. I'm so glad. This is so fun. Can people hear us now or no?
I
Yes.
think
Go
Yes.
ahead.
yes,
Hi,
yes,
everybody.
we're recording and
Yes.
everyone's here and we have
Hi.
the chat too. And if you're here and listening and you want to jump on the chat and tell us where you're from,
See.
because Gail already said she is from Clarion, Pennsylvania and loved all the
Yeah.
Western Pennsylvania references.
That's why I asked because I was going to say, so my parents actually went to Clarion, the college that's there, and my sister lived there for a while, so that is really cool. Hello, Gail, somebody from home. Nice to see you.
Love it. That's so
Well,
awesome.
I guess you saw I was just in Ohio and I'm like, okay, this is what winter really is.
Ugh.
Yeah, it was
I've hit my limit, you guys. I've had my limit of bad winters. I'm like, I don't want any more. I don't want any more.
well, I think it was 78 degrees here and sunshiny.
I
See,
was
So,
that's
just telling
perfect.
her that.
oh,
All
That's perfect.
I just want the grid to work in Texas. Like, I just don't want to work. Like, we can be cold here. We just want
Yeah.
electricity.
I know
That's
that's so scary. Oh my goodness.
yes, we've
yeah.
had some adventures, but hopefully, I feel like we're maybe at this point in February. I think we might be okay. I hope
Yeah,
Yes.
so.
I think so.
Like,
Hopefully, I know. I'm hoping we're on the upward trend here, but
yes,
Yeah.
for
But
sure.
you can't tell, but I'm wearing walking shorts. I had to quit. I literally 10 minutes ago, I was wearing a t-shirt.
oh, nice.
It
Nice.
was just a pretty day to walk.
Yeah.
Yes, it was
Oh, that sounds nice.
seriously.
I did go for a walk today, but it was like icy and snowy and a little dangerous.
It's
Well,
amazing.
my husband met me up there and he forgot to bring a coat. And one day it
Oh,
never got above freezing. So
Did he buy one or did he just suffer?
he suffered.
oh,
Yeah. No, we were
No,
okay. I mean, it's fine.
that is really funny.
We're just not used to it. I
yeah.
don't think that
Yes,
way.
it's true.
So
Well, I will let Elizabeth formally introduce you with your bio, and then we have lots of questions. And I told Amy that it's very fresh for me. So I am like chomping at the bit to hear more about the book and the inception and everything. So
yeah,
I'll let
we
you.
usually tag team it where I find a book and I've read it months ago. And then Alice waits to the very last minute. So it's like a little bit of both perspectives.
Good.
So it works
I
out
like
well.
that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we at Fabled have a very, very soft spot in our heart for Amy Jo Burns. We feel like we kind of discovered her back then before she was this mega famous author that she is now. So anyway, we're just so thrilled to see your success and just going to tell our audience a little bit about you. So Amy Jo Burns is the author of the memoir Cinderland and the novel Shiner, which was a Barnes& and Noble Discover pick. an NPR Best Book of the Year, and told in languages as incandescent as smoldering coal, according to the New York
Right.
Times. Her latest novel, Mercury, is a Barnes & Noble pick, a book club pick, a book of the month pick, a People magazine book of the week pick, and an editor's choice selection in the New York Times. Amy Jo's writing has appeared in the Paris Review Daily, Elle, Good Housekeeping, and the anthology Not That Bad. So yet again, we're just thrilled to have you, Amy, and can't wait, Amy Jo, just to talk about this wonderful book of yours.
Honestly, I've been looking forward to this since we booked it. So, getting to chat with readers is one of my favorite things, and especially it's such a beautiful bookstore. I mean, your reputation just it goes out everywhere. Just what it feels like to be in the store and all the love that you guys put into the books that you sell and everything. So this is just it's my pleasure, 100%.
Oh, good. Well, can you just kind of give everyone a brief synopsis of the book? Now, and again, everyone pretty much has read the book, I'm
Yeah.
sure, who's listening in. So, but just it's good to get a little refresher.
Sure, yes. So this book, Mercury, it's my third novel. It is set in the 1990s in Western Pennsylvania, and it's about a family of roofers who are on a roofing job, and they uncover something that they shouldn't, that's hidden in the church attic at the center of town, and it kind of sends the family into a necessary tailspin as all of their secrets start to come out. That's kind of what it's about.
That's
I like
awesome.
it.
Well, tell us what it's like to write a sophomoric novel after
Mm.
such a debut. I mean, I can't imagine all the emotions involved in that.
You know, it it's very intimidating, and I think the hardest thing is that you feel like I'm never going to love another project the way that I loved
Mhm.
that first one or whatever it is. Shiner was just such a special book for me. It just even though the characters, were completely made up, they're not, I don't have a super similar situation to them. I just felt them so deeply. They felt like they were my family, and it's really hard to let go of people like that you care so much about and you think I think in order to finish a book, you kind of have to feel like I could write this for the rest of my life. Like you have to love it that much, and then when it's done, you feel like it's like a death almost. You just feel like there's like this big separation. So whenever I'm in between projects, I'm always convinced that, well, I had a good run. This is it for this is it for me. I don't have any more ideas. But it takes a while to fall in love again, and I'd actually written a different book in between Shiner and Mercury. And that one I had to set aside because there were just some things that weren't coming together, and I was just feeling kind of lost. And then when I started to write Mercury, I didn't even know what I was writing. I kind of just sat down to do a writing exercise, and because I needed to remind myself, like, why I do it, why I love it, that kind of thing. And so I just sort of sat down and started writing about a memory of mine that takes place at a ball field. And there was a guy in my memory smoking a cigarette behind the bleachers, and he was hiding from his wife, which is exactly, the opening scene of the book. So I don't think I've ever had an experience where I sat down and the first thing I wrote ended up being the first thing in the book. Usually I'm all over the place, but this story, I think because it was just such a personal thing, it was almost like it had been waiting inside me, and it was waiting for me to kind of be ready to like listen to it and kind of copy it down. So I am the daughter of a roofer, granddaughter. My uncles are roofers, my brothers are roofers. So I very much grew up in a house, not exactly like the Josephs grew up, but in sort of just that lifestyle of what it is to kind of like live in a blue collar house and life. And there's so much beauty in it. And I just felt like I really wanted the world to get to experience all the artistry and sort of the emotion and the bravery that goes into kind of living that life. Because I feel like a lot of people don't get to see, they don't get like a front seat view to that kind of amazing life. So I was really excited to start putting that on the page. Just, I'd never read a book about roofers, and I thought, well, might as well be me to write it, I guess.
Yeah, that I loved that. That was kind of leading into my next question
Yeah.
is, I don't know much about roofing, and I've never, and so I loved learning about that, and also learning that that's sort of your family history. So can you talk a little bit about the any research that you did? Did you talk
Yeah.
to your family members about roofing? And also, just another part of that is with Shiner as well, it kind of feels like you're writing what you know. Is
Yeah.
that something that you just feel most comfortable writing in that environment that you know so well?
I think I keep trying to write things that I don't know and I can research and things like that, and they just don't turn out as good. There's something I think I like to have a little bit of skin in the game for some reason. I wish it wasn't like that because I think I would be able to write quicker and I would write more things. And maybe they'd feel more universal, but I just feel like the best stuff that comes out of me just has a really personal element to it. With Shiner, for example, I mean, I know we've talked about this, but I wanted to write like with something that felt my own experience with faith and, create characters kind of around that. And then in this case with Mercury, um, the thing about roofers, I will say, is that they're just such incredible storytellers. And, of all the studying and craft things that I've done for school, I think probably some of my most valuable lessons have come from roofers and how they tell a story and how they construct it, how they land a punchline. This is, and I kind of just grew up with those stories in my ears, that they were my first teachers. So when I sat down to write this, when I wrote Shiner, I really wanted it to feel like this is a woman's fable, this is a woman's tale, a legend. Um, with Mercury, I just really wanted to feel like a roofer had sort of pulled up a chair at your dinner table and was like, let me tell you what happened. I just
Mhm.
wanted it to have that vibe where you just really felt like you were in the room, you were at the table with these guys. So, because of that, most of what I did was just from my own memory. This is what I remembered from the 90s growing up with, the tools my dad had, the things he was doing, all that sort of stuff. Just memories of, my hometown, which is where I set it. That's where the name Mercury comes from. My hometown, it's called Mercer, but I changed the name to Mercury. We can talk about that too if you want. But
That's actually
oh,
our next question. That's so
yeah,
funny.
so we'll talk
You're
about that
doing
in a
great,
minute.
Amy Jo. We're so proud of
Um,
you.
but in turn, so I really wanted to capture it the way that I remembered it. And then when most of it was done, that's when I pulled my dad in and I sat down, and it was pretty much the opening scene that I really wanted to get right. So, after you get into the book a few pages, obviously Waylon goes to the church and he goes up in the ladder and he pulls down the hatch and there's all these bats that fly in his face, right? That actually happened to my dad, and it's one of my favorite stories that he told about trying to fix the steeple of the church that we went to when I was young. And I just had always loved that story and thought it would just be such a good opening for a novel. So once I had most of it down, I sat down with him and I said, okay, this is what I'm doing, and I laid out, the sort of the plot points, and he drew a map for me and of the way that the steeple looked and how he got up there, and he said, you could have a hand sticking out. So he got really into it, which was really fun. I usually work completely alone, and that's honestly what I did for most of this project, but it was really nice to get to share it with him in the end. And then, about a month before the book came out, he sent me all kinds of pictures and just stuff that's, was about the business. And so it was really cool to just get to celebrate a little bit of that with him, the business that he built. So in terms of research, it was just pretty much, my dad and my brother. And it was funny because they would disagree. Like I would say, okay, how would we patch this hole in the roof? And they would give me different answers. So, and my dad would be like, oh, roofers, they always disagree. Because I was worried if I put something in the book and I said, if it's wrong, it's my fault, it's not you. And he goes, oh, it doesn't matter. Roofers disagree all the time. So
Nice.
he was just so generous and gracious about it. And it was just a nice thing to share because I think even though, I'm the daughter of a roofer, it's always sort of been my dad's thing, my brother's thing. But writing this book really helped me feel like this is my inheritance too. This is my legacy. Writing it sort of made it mine, which has been a gift. And I didn't set out to do that, but now that I've published it and I look at it, that's really kind of what it means to me, which is really nice.
So cool. I love that it's you're writing this blue collar life, but in my opinion, it is literature. Like I told some of our staff that today. Like this is
Hmm.
literature, guys. This is not your typical book.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have more questions about Mercury. First,
Yes.
like the decision to call the book that, and then
Hmm.
you said that it was based on your, hometown. And then the fact that setting, I remember this in Shiner, is such an important part. of your books.
Yeah.
Um, I'd love to expound on that.
Absolutely. So, with my very first book, Cinderland, that was a memoir. And that was, it was a coming of age story about, why a young woman has to keep a secret and how that secret reverberates throughout a life and throughout a town. And so, when I was writing that book, I knew I wanted to change the name of my hometown because I didn't want it to feel like like I was pointing at this place on the map and saying, "Look at this weird thing and terrible thing that happened, in this place." But I wanted to write something that would make the reader feel the way I felt when I was there, to feel kind of the love that I have for this place. So the main thing that I wanted this town to feel like its own small planet, which meant, it's hard to get to, it's even harder to leave. So I just picked the name Mercury because it's a planet and there wasn't already a town in Pennsylvania called Mercury. But it kind of just, I feel like it had the vibe of just this place that's insular and in and of itself. And when I sat down to write Mercury, first of all, I wasn't even sure like what I was writing. So whenever I feel lost, I will just write about home. I think it's inspiring to me, I guess, to kind of write about what I miss. And, when I started working on it and some characters came up and they were roofers, there was really no question for me that I had to set it in my hometown because that was where the roofers that I knew were. And I love this idea of, when you said, Allison, like this is literature, we always take for granted when you read a book that's set in New York City, right? They will be like, well, here's, the Empire State Building and you're on 42nd Street and you're in the Village. And it's kind of accepted, like people have a general idea of where and what those terms mean. I wanted to kind of just do the same thing for my hometown and just name these places and let it feel like it had that same gravitas because it does for the people who live there for generations. I mean, I'm sure you guys can say the same thing about Waco. There's something really powerful about seeing like your own landscape in a book. So there was just no question. I said, this is a story about roofers and it has to be set in my hometown. And it took me forever to find a title. The first title that I worked with, I titled it In the Land of Mercury. And a good friend of mine had said, it sounds a little science fiction-y, so, you might not want to use the word Mercury. So I kind of had abandoned it. And then we went through literally 101 titles and my editor finally suggested, why don't we just call it Mercury? And then as soon as she said it, it was like, that's it. It captures so much of what a place can do in a story, how it can make you feel, what it does for the characters. I mean, so much of the characters in this book, their psyche is kind of wrapped up not only in the family, but in the place. And they kind of conflate in really like interesting and complicated ways. So it felt like the perfect title for a place that has always meant so much to me. And it's just given me so much creatively.
So great.
You talk about that feeling of home and being so proud of it. For me, one of the things that really stuck out to me was when I received, first of all, I had a handwritten note from you, which was so lovely when I got the book, and it had a playlist. And I was a sophomore in high school in 1990. And it was one of the favorite years of my life. It was just a wonderful year. And so when it started off there and it was the music and I
Mhm.
the high school angst in 1990, it just meant so much to me. So it felt kind of like home to me, even though I'm not from Pennsylvania. Uh,
Yeah.
but can you talk about the ambiance then and the music and what the music
Mhm.
has to do with the story? And I think maybe Kai is going to do the link. There we go. The Spotify
Oh,
link
thank you, Kai.
for the playlist. But can you talk
Yeah.
about that a little bit?
So, usually the first thing I do when I've committed to a writing project is I make a playlist because vibe and mood are very important for me. It is my favorite procrastination technique. Other writers will research forever, which I think is very useful for me. I'm like, I'm gonna just really zone in on this playlist here and get it really right in terms of mood. But when I'm thinking about place and time obviously go hand in hand. And for a while I was like, when do I want to set this? Is it current? Is it back then? And you're right, there is something about the 90s that it hits different. It's just when you hear the music, and I don't know if it's because that's when I was growing up or what it is, but I think it just kind of makes your heart, I don't know, grow a couple extra sizes. There's just something about it when you hear Roxette or Phil Collins or Janet Jackson, So what I started doing was I just made a playlist of all my favorite songs. And then when I started getting to know the characters, I started thinking about what their favorite songs would be. And that was such a fun way to kind of get to know them and think about, somebody like Marley loving Roxette, or maybe Baylor who says that he likes Def Leppard, but he really likes, the sappy November Rain song by Guns N' Roses, just things like that, that were
Good
super
song.
fun. I think what it helped me do was add a little bit of like necessary levity to a story that otherwise could feel a little heavy, because there's some heavy things that happen in the book, but I didn't want it to ever come across that these characters are cautionary tale, or this is a sob story, or this is sort of something about all people caught in the throes of poverty or anything like that. No, these are people who are alive and jubilant and complicated and frustrating, but they're people who want to live for the moment, and I think music just captures that so well. So this was a
Well, and
great.
Roxette was my favorite band my freshman and sophomore year. I listened to them constantly. So Marley and I would like that.
Yeah, so what's your favorite Roxette song? I can't choose.
You put me on the spot. What's my favorite one? What's it called? What is it called? Uh,
Joyride,
oh, I love
Dangerous.
Joyride. No, she's got the look.
Oh, yeah. I had a hard time choosing a song, which one I should choose for Marley, because I thought all of these Roxette songs are so good. And then, so the way I landed on Dangerous for her was I thought, what would be great to be playing when she kind of comes into town and she sees the three Joseph brothers, up on the
Oh,
hill or
yeah.
whatever. So
Yeah,
that's
I
kind of,
remember playing Joyride a lot when I was in driver's ed.
yes.
But no, she's got the look. It was my favorite.
Oh, good. Yeah, there's nothing like Roxette. Yeah, so there's something about that just communicates, some of these people, they don't take themselves too seriously, which can be useful when they're kind of, you see them at their worst and their best. So it was super fun.
I always feel sorry for people who didn't grow up in high school in the 90s, because it's just it's like a last frontier to me.
It
Like
is.
before the
It was
internet
like,
it's got us.
yeah, there weren't cell phones. It was just
Yeah.
like I remember, riding around in my best friend's car. She had gotten a red 1981 Chevy Citation, super old car. She got it for $700, and we would just drive around and listen to the radio and sing. And those are
Fun.
some of my favorite memories, and that was exactly what I wanted to put into Marley and Jade's relationship, was just this sense that their best times are always when they're together, and they don't even have to be doing anything. They're just having a good
We
time because they're
didn't. We didn't have to do anything. We could
no,
just
yeah,
listen to the radio.
And nobody knew where we were.
yeah, never.
Right. Which, I mean, I'm glad the world is different as a parent now.
Yes.
But
But
it's
that's another thing about a small town, is it's kind of like your parents might not know where you are, but somebody's parents are
somebody else
gonna
does.
know where you
Right. Somebody
are.
else has seen you. Funny. Well, I always love to imagine like who people are, like if we were casting this, which I
Yes.
was like, this has to be a miniseries. Um, but and I didn't really cast anyone but Baylor, who I thought could be a young Josh Lucas from Sweet
Oh,
Home
I love
Alabama,
that.
because I think he'd get real mad and cute.
Yeah.
And we love that you
So
called him Baylor. Was that because of Waco?
yeah, I wonder about that too. We were because Baylor's here, so
Oh, yeah.
It's our university, about a mile away from Fabled.
Hmm.
that's right. There's something very familiar about the family dynamics of the Joseph men. Like I noticed the mention of Cain and Abel as a
Yeah.
representation of Baylor and Waylon's relationship. Was that the main kind of inspiration for their complexity of the relationship of them together, or was there another inspiration for
I
them?
think the main inspiration for that was probably just, I mean, the characters are so different from my dad and his brothers, but there was something about, so my dad has one younger brother, two older brothers, and they just had this really, really close knit relationship where, so like, they built a whole house together, you know. Um, they just were up in each other's business all the time. And I think that dynamic, I just have always found it so interesting and fascinating to feel like there's somebody who you feel like knows you better than anyone and they make you madder than anyone. And then there are times where you just feel like, do you even know me at all? Because I don't think you do. You
And you
know,
have
so
to work together too.
yes, like there's no separation. They live together, they work together, they go to school together, they even fall in love with the same woman, and that's kind of like one reason why I made their names rhyme was because I just wanted to get across that it's like they are entwined. And again, that's sort of what life is like when you have kind of a prominent family in a small town that goes back for generations. So, um, the reason I pulled in Cain and Abel was because I was really thinking about what would it mean to have your dad kind of curse you in a way and kind of call you. I just that's I mean, there's many parts of the book that I love, but that part is moving for me because I think to be a young person and have your dad kind of like put his thumb on you and press and say, this is what you are. And Baylor in particular gets that from both of his parents, and have it be made a joke, to be named somebody like Cain at such a young age. It just feels so condemning, and that's what I wanted the reader to really feel was like, wow, Baylor can be a real jerk, but I'm not sure he's ever really had anybody in his corner except for Waylon, So yeah, I kind of pulled a little bit from real life for that one, and then was happy to be able to pull in a biblical allusion that kind of feels like it gives it a little bit of weight.
Very, very true.
One of the themes of this book that kind of that I appreciated and made me a little tired at the same time as a woman is this theme of the woman needing to hold everyone together, to fix everything, to be there. So, do you think that's true? Do you think that's a good thing or a bad thing, or is it fair? It is what it
You
is.
know, yeah, I think it is what it is, and one of the things that I just had to do when I was writing about roofers was to really capture the blue collar women that I know because they are roofers in their own way, meaning it's not like they're up on the roof or they're punching a clock or anything like that. It's they are the ones that like make the business run. That's what I have seen in my family is, these women sort of don't know how to do payroll. They don't know anything about insurance or, you know, doing quotes, answering the phones, all that thing, but they just learn. They pick it up and they do it while they've got a baby on their hip and another one in school. And it's kind of like they don't have a lot of choices and they don't complain. So I just wanted to write about what that lack of choice can do over the course of two generations. But I also wanted to show that, to celebrate that these women, they find their way even still, or Marley does, I should say. Marley steps into it with a kind of freedom that her mother-in-law was never given, and you can kind of really see that in their interactions. But um, I'm so proud to have had women like that in my life that continue to pull off the impossible, but women I can talk to now that I'm a mom and also try and do those things and have them be like, yeah, it was really hard. It was really hard. You can't do it all. You can try, but there's always something that falls through the cracks. So, um, yeah, I just feel like whenever, we hear about what small businesses are like, it's just sort of driven by a man and what he's doing. And it's just been my experience that yes, the men are important, but that they have these wives that kind of just step in and they really pull things together. And it is like you said, is it good? Is it bad? It just sort of is. And they kind of take it as it is and run with it and don't stop to question, like, man, is this even fair? Like, do I even want this? So that was a really important thing to me to get across that this is not just a man's world here. It's like, the women are equally important.
Totally. Um, I don't know if you know this, Amy Jo, but my husband is a minister, and both of these novels have characters really grappling with their faith
Yeah.
and impact that the church can have on someone's life positively, negatively, and throughout their entire life. Talk about that choice as a
Yeah.
writer to include that in your books.
It's interesting because I realized when I finished Mercury, I thought, oh my goodness, all three of my books have had pastors in it. And it's not even something that I set out to do, but it's obviously, my faith is a huge part of my life. So I think it is just reflected naturally in it. But what I wanted to do, I mean, in Shiner, I mean, for that preacher, his faith isn't counterfeit, but it's seriously misguided. So what I wanted to do in Mercury was to maybe show a pastor who is a little bit wayward, but then to also show what a good one can do, or even just one who is willing to listen and see. I mean, I really believe that if you have somebody in your life who is like that, who pastors in the sense of, I come alongside you, I love you as you are, I listen, that sort of thing, it can really change the trajectory of somebody's life when you have that kind of kindness that comes without judgment, that comes without, any sort of condemnation. If you just have somebody that says, I see a light in you. I see a value in you. I just think you're such a worthy person. I think that can save a life. So I wanted to create a pastor that is sort of like, kind of says what everybody wishes maybe a pastor would say, but maybe they've had an experience where that's not the case. So he was a fun person to write, to just pull from. I've known a lot of really wonderful pastors in my life. So just pulling bits and pieces from all those people, and it's not just men. I mean, my sister, I consider her a pastor. She works at her church in that capacity. So just pulling out, I think, what I've gotten from some of those really positive interactions and putting them into a person was really nice, because I think part of faith is grappling with it, and I wanted to put that on the page. I didn't want to shy away from it. I think sometimes with faith, it's like you've got this dogma, right? And it's like you can talk about all of these things and you can't talk about these things, and it just doesn't make a lot of sense for real life. You know what I mean? So I just wanted to have somebody just be like the hands and feet of compassion, and that's what Pastor Lennox is for pretty much everybody in the book.
And he was just an interim, right?
Yeah,
For
just the interim. Yeah. That was a big thing when I was growing up. Was like, the interim Presbyterian pastor that ends up, and he's there for years and
don't get
years,
too
and
attached to him. He's,
he's
here and
not staying.
that's right.
Yeah, yeah. But then, and then equally you have another guy who is there and he's trying to do all the right things, but he's miserable and then makes some, not great choices. And, it's everybody's human, you know what I mean? So
I was just sad there was no snake handling in this one.
yeah, that was a one and done for me. I hate snakes. I can't believe I wrote an entire book. I think I got through that by just thinking about, Briar, the character, the preacher, he loves them. So I can sort of like let him love them while I am like shaking in my
Right.
boots, but never again. I think I'm good there.
Yeah. Well, speaking of themes again of the book, I was talking about when I was a sophomore in high school and I moved to Waco then, and I've always had this feeling of feeling not belonging, and I
Yeah.
felt that way when I moved to Waco, along a million years ago, but I do still remember that feeling. So I'm just kind of sensitive to that theme in particular, and I
Yeah.
felt it a lot in this book. So it's just
Mhm.
Marley wanting to belong to a family, and really the boys wanting to belong to to their family and to their brothers and their business. So can you speak a little bit about, is that something that you felt personally, or that theme of belonging?
Oh, yeah, you know what? I think I felt for Marley so much because I think moving to a new town at that age, obviously, as you experienced, it is so hard and it can send you into such a tailspin. And, so I grew up and stayed in the same place, until I left for college. But I do think there's something about having people know you all your life like that you hit a point, and it is kind of around high school, where you feel like I will never be as well known by anybody as I am here. I will never feel as suffocated by anyone or anything as I do here. And all these questions of like, who am I if I leave? You know what I mean? And it's this very weird paradox of wanting desperately to deeply belong and know that you do, and to also feel like there might be something in that that is really holding you down. And, I guess when when I shape it like that, that sounds a little bit more like what Shay's experience is in this town. But for Marley, because she doesn't have any of that baggage, she gets to experience, or she wants to experience all of that good stuff of what it really means to be known and have a seat at the table and all of that. So what I love about her is that she's so willing to just take all the good and say, I'm going to leave this bad stuff that I don't want at the door. I wish I could be more like that in real life, to sort of say, I'm going to hold on to these good things that are this family, and then I'm going to call out the bad. The trick for her is that belonging, she starts to believe, means it requires her silence. And I think what her narrative arc over the course of the book is her realizing that I shouldn't have to be silent in order to belong here. I have my own voice, and true belonging means that I get to use it. And I think by the end of the book, not only does she realize that, but the other people in her life realize that as well. But she had so much wanted to be a part of this family that she was willing for a period of time to trade her voice for it. And then she started to see there's a price to that too. So I thought a lot about, when I was writing the book, like, what does it really mean to belong? What is the price that we pay for it? What are the kinds of sins that we commit for those that we love? Because I think it's all like this tangled knot that comes together. And then for this family in particular, then they sort of have to ask themselves, do we belong together? Is there something that's worth saving here? And like, what needs to die in order for the good stuff to live? So I don't know if all families go through that sort of crisis, but in this case, I just wanted to write about a family that they feel like this is the end, but then they end up stronger because of it. I think that is a very encouraging message for anybody who might be going through it. You know what I mean?
Very true. Both of your books do something that I love, which is when it ends, it's like the reader almost knows all. And in my mind, it feels a lot like in all slow motion, and their soundtrack is swelling, and you're like, oh, that it's all connecting. Is that important to you? Like when you're writing in the book, and when you're thinking about the reader, is that like they will figure everything out by the end?
I think what I like the end to be is I kind of like it to feel a little bit like a beginning. Like at the end of the last page, you feel like, wow, these characters' real lives are actually just about to begin. We have just experienced everything they had to go through to get to the point where they can actually show up for their lives in the right way. So I like that idea of feeling like there's a little bit of a question mark about, well, what are these characters going to do now, having gone through everything they went through? Um, but at the same time, obviously, you want it to feel a little bit satisfying. So I had a writing teacher tell me once, the end is never what you think it is. And I found actually that that has been very true in life. When you think something is ending and it isn't, or you think you're at the end of something and you're not. So I like that idea of playing with it at the end. And Mercury in particular, I don't know what it was about the end, but every time I would read it, I would get to that last paragraph and just cry. And I think it is something about um, a woman kind of being able to take flight, which is interesting because that's also what happens at the end of Shiner, was that I wanted at the end of Shiner, I wanted that main character to feel like she had a choice. And we as the reader don't know it, but we know that she's the one that's going to make it. And I think that's exactly what happens with Marley and her daughter at the end, is that she's trying to say, you have choices. There is freedom here, and I'm here to support you in that. And there's something like I just, maybe it's because I'm a mom and I have a daughter now, that I just feel like, oh, I want her to feel that when she looks at the world, and I would want her to know she can get that from me. Um, I know that was a bit of a bunny trail to answer your question, but I like endings to feel like another book could be written starting right there, you know?
I think that is too kind of the privilege we get if we're writing, is that we do get to figure out how everything fits. And in real life,
Hmm.
that's not the case. So it does feel satisfying for that, at least for me.
Yeah, because I wanted, I want it to feel earned and I want it to feel real. I don't want to do something in a book that feels like, oh, this is too buttoned up to happen in real life, which is one of the reasons why between Marley and Elise, they don't have a sort of like coming together moment where they finally understand each other and they cry and they hug it out. Because I do not know one person who's had that kind of experience with their mother-in-law. I just don't. Not, I think a lot of women have a good relationship with their mother-in-law, but I have not seen somebody be like, you know, it was really tense and then all of a sudden we had this conversation and we were good. I just haven't seen it. What I have seen is everybody's trying and they just keep missing each other and it's frustrating for everybody. And then you feel like all of a sudden the relationship ends and then you ask yourself, did I do everything I could? Did I love the way that I should have? Like you just are filled with like questions and regret. That I feel like is very realistic.
Yeah.
Well, and we're doing a lot of comparing of your two books because we love them
Yeah.
so much. I know this
Yeah,
is mostly about Mercury, but but we still want to talk about Shiner.
of
And one of
course.
the things that I love is that in both of the books, you really have an unconventional love story. So in Shiner, it's really the love story of two lifelong friends. I mean, very platonic, but they were the loves of each other's lives.
Yeah.
And I can't remember their names. So I'm thinking of Briar and Wren, but I can't remember the mother's.
Ruby and Flynn.
Okay, yes. And in Mercury, we have Marley, who really falls in love with the Joseph family, really
Mm-hmm.
more than just one of the boys, it feels to me. So, what is that like? I mean, is that something that you think about when you're writing?
I like for there to be a little bit of romance in a book. I just do. I feel like it makes the book feel, it gives it warmth and it is lush. And I just, especially when you're writing about coming of age, I just feel like first love, romance is such a huge part of that. But oftentimes, it isn't just this like A to B thing. Oftentimes there is a family that, you know, you just fall in, when you start dating someone, you fall in love with their family. I feel like that's very common, you know, and I do think it's, you know, in Shiner that idea of, you know, the one that got away and the things that didn't work out, that also feels very realistic. So, um, I love to play with romance and mostly in the ways that it sort of like reveals the characters, like how they're brave and how they're afraid and how they're hurt. I just think when you see what or who somebody loves and how they love, it makes you appreciate them as a character, makes you want to go on the ride with them, because everybody kind of like loves in a pretty unique way. And I love creating that. I love thinking about, you know, like Baylor, for example, I mean, he's not the main love interest in Mercury, but he is somebody who loves. And he and Marley do have sort of a loving relationship that ends up as a brotherly, sisterly sort of thing. Thinking about how somebody like that would show love and would feel hurt when they're rejected was really a wonderful experience for me because I know a lot of Baylors in my real life that I grew up with. And so it helped me to kind of think through like what if somebody isn't good with words but they do have the deep feelings and it's not that they don't feel it, they just don't have the words to say it. So I just think it's romance and what you love, whether it is a mountain as it was in China, or you know, whether it's a family or a town or whatever it is. It just reveals so much about like what matters to a character and then what they're willing to do for it. And I think that's such a great plot or premise for a book, you know?
Mhm.
That's true. We have two questions in the chat that are really good, and I want to make sure they're answered.
Sure.
First one is from Elena, and it says, you don't typically write the beginning of the book first. Could you talk about what your writing process looks like?
Oh, sure. Oh my goodness. Yes. So, usually what happens when I write something is I will have an idea and it's just a spark of something small. You know, with Mercury, it literally was this memory of a guy smoking a cigarette behind some bleachers and then it just sort of went from there. So I don't have a plot really. It's just like a spark of an idea that I will run with and love working like that because then I get to surprise myself um in a fun way and then hopefully like the reader will feel surprised as well. Um But the downside to that is that I try a lot of things that don't work, or I've tried things that need to sit and are still simmering, even after I've put in, say, 6 months of work or a year of work, and I'll get to a point where I say, I can't figure it out. I got to put it aside. So it's a very messy process for me. I really like to write my first drafts by hand. I like to sit in my bed. I like to get really comfortable and just write, because there's something nice for me about feeling like I'm just writing a journal entry that takes the pressure off. And then when I actually go to type it up, I at least have like a heft of pages, and I know I'm not going to have a blank, like blinking cursor that makes me feel like I have a term paper to write or something.
I love that you're in bed doing it. That's
Oh, I
luxurious.
tried to be, I don't know what's happening to me, but it's like I can't like sit in an actual chair anymore.
Yeah. I'm like, I must take to my bed and
I
write.
do
It's
most,
like,
I do most of my
take it
work
to
in
my
bed
bed.
too. I've got my computer on my bed that's where I want to be too.
I used to feel like, am I even legit? What am I doing? I'm writing my bed. I don't have, because, we have a 3-bedroom house. I've got 2 kids. During COVID, my husband worked at home. And I used to feel like that was evidence that I wasn't doing something right, or I couldn't take myself seriously, or I wasn't actually going to have a career in doing this. And then I realized, no, wait, I actually like writing in my bed. That even if I had an office, there would either be a bed in there, or I would just be in my regular bed.
I love
So
it.
it puts me at ease. It helps me kind of like relax into something, find something real. So I will just write, and I don't question myself in that first draft. I just go with it and see where it takes me. What that means though is usually nothing's written in order. It doesn't make a lot of sense. So then in the subsequent drafts, I really have to look at the pieces and then start rearranging them like a quilt and say, okay, what is the pattern here? What am I going for? When I step back and look at it, like, what is it doing? Um, and then I always curse myself then, and I say, why is this my process? It's so messy, it's so inefficient. But I think surprising myself is worth it. Like that surprise is better than efficiency in my mind. But Mercury, for whatever reason, I don't know, it's the only thing I've ever written where it was like I sat down and I just kind of wrote it beginning to end, which is interesting because it's not always told chronologically. But
Right.
it was like I heard, Waylon in my ear, and then I heard Marley, and then I heard Baylor, and then I heard Shay, and that just sort of was how I wrote it. And then usually what I do at that point is I say, is this how I really want to tell this story? Is this the best way? But it just really felt, like I said earlier, that we were listening in on a conversation at a table. And I said, you know what? I'll go with my gut on this one. But usually it takes a lot more like rearranging and making sure everything lines up and stuff like that. So it takes a while, but I enjoy it for the most part.
Makes sense. Well, Ellie had a very good question. It said, what was your favorite scene to write from Mercury?
Oh, I love that question, and I never get asked it. So thank you, Ellie, for asking it. Um, in this book, I'm thinking of a few, but I love the salon scenes between Jade and Baylor. When he's got his hair all shampooed and her fingers are going through it and she's cutting it and he's very like excited but nervous. There was something about that I just thought was so fun and funny. And anytime I got to work on it, I could just feel myself smiling. Jade was a really fun character to put on the page because she doesn't take any crap from anybody, and she says what she thinks, and those characters are always really fun to write. And Baylor's the same way. So putting them in a room together and just asking myself, well, what would they actually talk about was really fun. And I wrote a lot of different versions because in my heart, I guess I'm a romantic and I'd wanted them to end up together. So I'd written that ending and I thought about it and I thought about it, and then I adjusted it because I thought, I love these characters, but Baylor is like not good enough for her, at least at that point in his life. So yeah, I would say the salon scenes were probably my favorite. And then, I mean, this is a weird scene to mention, but when Waylon gives his eulogy at the church, that was a scene I had really like pushed through and and it was just hard to write. And one of the last revisions I did was when I added the line where he sort of says, loving somebody means you're going to let them down. And that was one of the final things that I put in the book. And um, it, I felt like I had finally like put my finger on like Waylon's deepest hurt in a way that felt like meaningful and powerful for me. So that was one that I also enjoyed kind of putting together in the end, although the initial writing of it was pretty hard.
Right. That funeral scene was so well done because I feel like I have seen those funerals where the family is so deep in grief, doesn't know
Yeah.
how to process it. You want to help them, but again, and then they're up in the front of the church, which didn't Baylor like cuss or something?
Yes.
I was
Yes.
like, yeah, that sounds about right.
Because I was thinking, like, okay, if this were like the roofers I know, and all of a sudden they're shoved into a suit and tie and they're already upset and they're trying to figure that all of a sudden they have to be articulate, what would happen? And that's exactly what I
Felt
put in
so
there.
authentic.
Yeah.
Well, we
That's so
were just cheering you on at Fabled when we kept seeing, oh, it's a Barnes and Noble pick and Book of the Month Club pick, and it feels like your star is on the rise. So, can you talk a little bit about that? Has that been surprising to you, or is there any kind of interesting story over the last 2 months with your release and tour?
Um, it has been surprising. I think especially because with Shiner came out May of 2020. Bookstores were all, as you guys know, bookstores were closed. You couldn't go shopping, and it just felt like it was not the right time to celebrate a book release. And so, what has been really wonderful about this experience is that it has been very celebratory. And I feel like I've gotten to see readers in person, and the Barnes and Noble thing was such a wonderful surprise. And so, usually, what happens is I'm hit with like shock and awe because I can't believe it. Um, but then it ends up being the same thing that I've always loved, that I loved with Shiner as well, is that, I get to connect with readers who have like resonated with the characters. And it's just like we're having now, like just having a heart to heart about the things that matter in life. And it reminds me that books are so important. Books do a lot of really good work to help us make us more compassionate. I think booksellers and librarians are on the front lines of that war of how to raise a compassionate people that was like desperately, desperately needed right now. So I'm always reminded of that. So I think some of the most special moments have just been a reader reaching out and saying, "Oh my goodness, when I read Marley, I felt like I was reading my life," or you completely captured me when you were writing about Shay. That's the sort of thing that makes me feel like, because that's what I love in books too, right? Is that you just feel like you understand something a little bit better. Feel a little bit more seen. So when somebody has that experience, it means the world to me. But I will say one fun thing that's just coming to mind is, you know, if you guys know Friends in Fiction, it's like a podcast. Of four really popular writers. I did their podcast, and they have a librarian named Ron Block who is in Cleveland. He's just such a wonderful guy, such a big fan of books. He We created a cocktail that's called Marley's Moonlit Margarita, and it's basically like a blackberry margarita. And he made these little cotton candy clouds using a cookie cutter, and he stuck it on the end of the straw in a drink, and it just made my day. It was just the cutest. So seeing other people be creative with your stuff is just really wonderful.
Well, Allison's going to do this last question, but I know I've told you the story, and it's one of my all-time favorites. Was you giving me a recipe for moonshine when I was doing something for Shiner,
Yes.
and I went to our local liquor store to buy moonshine, and only had change in because my kids had my debit card, so I was like scrounging at the bottom of my purse finding
Wait, I didn't know this story.
for moonshine, and the woman said, who was helping, she said, "Ma'am, I'll give you the staff discount. It's okay." And I thought, she just thinks that I'm this poor old lady who's desperate for moonshine, like the Waltons with the recipe, Anyway, That's one of my
That's the
lifetime
way
favorites.
moonshine should be purchased. And you're
That's right.
digging for the change and
It's like lint on the pennies. Yeah, that was a real special moment in my life. So
I did not know that story. That is amazing. I
I
love
love
it.
that story.
yeah.
Great. It has felt a little bit like with you and getting the accolade that you deserve. It reminds me of like when you love an indie, band and then
Yeah.
they get popular and you're like, of course, guys, where have you been? Yes.
Yeah.
So that's
We knew
been really
you then.
is there anything you are working on now and can you reveal it to us?
Sure. So, I mean, I mentioned, I kind of, when I'm in between projects, I feel a little like, what is happening? Where am I? It takes me a little bit of time to get my footing. But I feel like in this last week, I've finally got some momentum on something. I have been doing like a little bit of screenwriting. But that aside, the project that I worked on in between Shiner and Mercury is about a missing folk singer, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to pull it off, but that is what I'm working on right now. So it's just the story behind a famous folk singer that goes missing and what happened, and it's been really fun to work on. So yeah, so I don't know if I'll be able to pull it off, but I hope it's going to be my next book. I'm enjoying it at least for now.
Oh, great. Well, we believe in you and
Thank you. I appreciate that.
whatever comes our way.
It means more than you know. So thank you. Because
Love
you you spend so much time by yourself and you're like, am I crazy? Like I just, you never kind of know when you're working in a vacuum. So I appreciate the encouragement.
So great. Well, thank you so, so much. I mean, we probably have like 10 more questions to ask you, but we'll cut ourselves off for now. But I just truly, truly thank you for being here and just for writing such a wonderful book that I personally absolutely loved. Probably one of my favorites this year. We are going to introduce our next book for next month. If you don't mind sticking around a little bit, I'll
Oh, I
have
would love to hear it.
Okay, good. I'll let Elizabeth introduce, and then Kai will put the links to sign up in the chat and also to purchase the book. So be ready for that.
So the story is for next month, we are going to talk to Andrea Mara, who is an Irish crime novelist. And I found this book. It was this book in England that I just happened to find, and I have been begging my publishers for several years to get it in America. And finally, I just thought I'm going to do this myself. I talked to the reps who have a British connection, and it took 5 months to come from England to our store. We have about 100 copies of All Her Fault. And now we just found out that All Her Fault is going to be a TV show in America. So I feel like that maybe I had something to do with it.
I feel like you're a kingmaker, is what
I
I
try,
think.
I do what I can.
Agree. Elizabeth, that's amazing.
Yeah, but this was kind of fun because Andrea Mara, I just told her, I'm like, we're in this little Indian Texas, and I absolutely love your books. I love Irish crime. And she said, I'm so glad because I have my brand new American debut. It's coming out this summer. And she said, and I don't have any contacts for people in America. So you're my first American contact.
Oh,
So she's going to join us from Ireland. It'll be like 1 o'clock in the morning her time next month to join us. And I'm telling you, this book is unbelievable. Amy Jo, you would love this book.
oh, you sold me on it already. Oh my goodness.
Let me just tell you the premise, the first chapter of this book, and tell me if it doesn't hook you. A mother of a kindergartner is very excited because her little kindergarten boy has been asked to go on a play date, and the mother seems very, very sweet. So the mother sends her little boy off. The other mother says, here's my address, come pick your son up at 5 o'clock. So at 5 o'clock, the mother goes, knocks on the door, and a woman answers, and she doesn't know who this person is. And she said, do you know where Milo, I think his name is Milo, is? And the woman said, I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh my gosh. Whoa.
It's so good.
You're welcome for the nightmares.
Yeah, it's like the mother's worst nightmare, but the way it wraps up, so good.
Oh.
I'm excited. I will have to read it with the lights on, maybe.
Yeah.
But that's exciting. I also wanted to post in the chat really fast. And Amy Jo, if you're interested in this, we will have our book review for January through April books on March 26th. Elizabeth and I will going through all the best books in our opinion. And we might have some spicy takes on other books that you think maybe got a lot of attention that we did not like. I feel like maybe we might need to make ourselves a Marley margarita for that.
You do. You
Or I
definitely
may
do.
just go back and get some moonshine.
Yeah,
There you
either-
go.
Hey, both will work.
That makes it entertaining for everyone watching for sure.
You did have great moonshine recipes. I'm just saying, it wasn't like we were drinking. We just had, I don't remember what it was. It was some strawberry dessert with moonshine in it
Oh,
that you
yeah, moonshine cherries, maybe brownies or something like that. Yeah,
Mm, that is
fun
so
times.
it was good
Well,
stuff.
thank you guys again. If you are here and you would like to watch again, this will be sent to you tomorrow, about 24 hours later, as a recording. Thank you again, Amy Jo. We're cheering you on, and we can't wait to see what you come up with next.
Thank you so much. I can't tell you how much that support means, and you guys have all of my heart. So from New Jersey to Texas, I'm sending you guys lots of love, and thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Good to see you, Amy Jo.
You too, guys. Have a good night, everybody.
Bye.